And guys, welcome to a podcast edition here on hoopslounge.com. Myself, Phil Boileau, aka Sporting Phil, here with Justin Rowan, aka Cavs Canada. We're talking about one of my favorite subjects right now, and these are the NBA rookies. I know we're just a week or so into the NBA season, but these guys some are starting to prove their worth, and some are starting to show that they're rookies. Justin, you know what? I'll be gracious here. Where do you want to start when it comes to a rookie? What rookie has stood out to you and just needs, that 15 minutes of fame right now?
Man, that's so tough to say because there's just been so many that are great. I mean, obviously the most obvious candidate would be Karl-Anthony Towns, number one overall pick. He's playing out of his mind, and what he's doing is incredibly impressive. His poise, his body for a rookie. But I think if I was going to highlight one, and I know you're going to love this, is Kristaps Porzingis. I mean, I don't think a lot of people expected him to be this good this early. Obviously, we're still dealing with small sample size theater there. But the Knicks are a team that has a lot of veterans. They're competing for a playoff spot. And if he can contribute right away, I think that's going to make it very possible for them to make the playoffs.
Oh, absolutely. And I think for me, it's interesting. I really like Kristaps, what he's bringing, but it's all for the reasons that I didn't think he'd be contributing right away. When you look at some of his stats, shooting 40% from the field goal percentage. Now that's coming up. He's learning to shoot a little better, but 21% from threes. We thought this guy would be kind of a Andrea Bargnani, sit out at the 3-point line while Carmelo bangs in the post. But we're seeing him being very assertive. And I think that's the thing that's surprising most people, his aggressiveness, both on the offensive and defensive ends. Averaging 8.3 rebounds per game for a guy who's supposed to be too thin to be able to body up on anyone is pretty surprising. And don't forget, he's only playing 24 minutes a game. So his per 48 minutes stats are actually really big. 12.3 points, 8.3 rebounds for an NBA rookie playing only 24 minutes. That's not bad.
No, not at all. I mean, I think that's probably the right way to use them too, because you don't want to ask them to do too much too early. If you can get 24 meaningful minutes from them, you're laughing. I really am impressed with his aggressiveness as well. I mean, he's jumping over guys like LaMarcus Aldridge, Kevin Love. He's getting put back dunks over
gotta
top
be
of
one of the
people.
biggest guys in the NBA. He just looks like like he's legit 7'2", 7'3", like he's listed.
Oh, he's absolutely massive, and he moves well for his size too. Like we've seen like little shimmy shakes, like almost Hakeem moves every now and then out of him, and it's really funny to see just how poised he is, how aggressive he is. He really didn't look good in summer league, at least to me. I wasn't impressed with him, and I thought, okay, well, he's going to take some time, as most big men and as most rookies do. But what he's done early on has been really impressive to me.
Oh, absolutely. And, he was coming from another culture altogether, a bit of a shell shock. I mean, some other numbers I like from him: 1.2 blocks, 1.5 steals from a big guy. When you get good numbers of steals from big guys, like Nerlens Noel was showing in his rookie year and continuing to do it, that means active hands. That means he's athletic. He can go laterally, and that's a big plus, especially against kind of a stiffer center with Robin Lopez.
Yeah, I mean, steals, especially when you evaluate college players, steals is usually one of the things that really does translate, and steal rate. You look at that because it tells you how they're using their athleticism defensively. I mean, some people obviously gamble for steals, so it doesn't tell the whole picture, but he does have really quick hands like a Nerlens Noel. So I think that's a really good point that you did bring up there.
Mhm. And so speaking at the top of the list, we're talking about big guys. Obviously, Karl-Anthony Towns, the number one pick. Now, I think what's surprising is he's putting up numbers that would kind of stack up to a starter almost right away. We've talked to at nauseum about his intelligence, about the influence that Kevin Garnett's having on him. But for a rookie to come in, play 28 minutes a game, shoot close to 50%, hit his free throws at 89% or 88.9, hit close to 9 rebounds, 2.8 blocks, and 14.8 points. As a rookie who's just starting, it seems like he's got something that someone else that the others haven't figured out. Like he just seems to have that kind of old man game in a young man's body.
And he has the old man's game in a young man's body, but he also is kind of the modern NBA big man. He can shoot it. He passes a lot. He has great vision, a lot of composure. I mean, if he was a free agent, he'd already be getting a max contract just because of his potential and how good he is now. Um, there's really no doubt in my mind that he's going to be a star player. And I don't know if you saw this, but David Thorpe, who I mean, he's brilliant. ESPN does a lot of scouting and things like that.
He's also
He
a big
said
Andrew Wiggins fan.
he is. And he came out and he said, there's no doubt in my mind that Karl-Anthony Towns has more upside than Anthony Davis after seeing him play. That doesn't mean he's going to be a better player than Anthony Davis. But when you look at the skill set that Towns has, I mean, what more do you want a big man to be able to do? He can handle the ball. He can shoot. He's good at the free throw line. His defensive composure is fantastic. I'd say, I mean, as much as people kind of look at Anthony Davis's blocks and steals, things like that, he's still not a good defensive player. And that's why they go out and they get an Omer Asik. They get centers to play next to him because they're sheltering him a little bit, that power forward role. Karl-Anthony Towns is doing this at a center position, which means he's going up against the biggest guys in the league. And center is typically a position that has more impact on team defense than power forward does. So I can definitely see where he's going. Do I think he's going to be better than Anthony Davis? Way too early to tell. And I mean, Davis looks like he's on track to be the best player in the game. So it's high praise, and he really is turning heads early on.
Absolutely. And you know what, you brought up something I found was interesting. To me, it's the biggest telling point of a guy like this. Like it's his poise. And to me, it's the intelligence. Like we've seen guys for years come through the systems, like tall, athletic, talented. You could say everything under the moon. I mean, this is probably the best example of why I've been criticized early for the Anthony Randolphs of the world, trying to cheer on these talented guys. But it's literally just his intelligence. What impresses me most about watching his game literally is not any shot or block or rebound he takes. It's going from the defensive end to the offensive end, where his eyes go, where he's taking a leadership role on both ends. He's like quarterbacking everything, how he's not backing out. He never rushes everything. I saw him, he would just take a commanding low post stance, shoot a little jump hook over either shoulder, and on the opposite side, be back on defensive rotation, go out to cover a guard, then come back in time with his agility to cover his man when the balls come back inside. To me, it's those little things, and I'll never forget one when we were interviewing him personally. I was making a joke about the new NBA 2K game, and I just asked him quickly, how do you think of your character? And he's like, I don't have time for that. I play the real 2K. And that answer, along with a lot of other stories we've heard about this guy, this guy is a professional. He sees his craft as his job, and that's, I think, going to be the difference between some of these guys who have all the talent and some of these guys who make it happen. And
Right.
while it is too early for Anthony Davis, I'm going to be one of those people who call it out right now that in 5 years we're talking about Mr. Towns instead of Mr. Davis as the best
Wow.
big man in the NBA. I'm just going to say it now, but that's just a gut feeling. But okay, so we're going along with the big guys. Jahlil Okafor, obviously number 3 overall pick, Philadelphia 76ers, being showcased in that Brett Brown system, putting 20 points a game. What's your takeaway on this guy?
I mean, we talked about it before the draft. I thought he, at least offensively, has more upside than any player in the draft, and he's showing it right away. I mean, he's a lot for teams to handle. I mean, you see veteran big men, like they've played the Cavaliers twice, and he's abused Timofey Mozgov, who is a good defender. Obviously, that comes with a caveat that Mozgov's dealing with injuries and is out of shape, but at the same time, he's capitalizing on those opportunities. And again, like we said with Karl-Anthony Towns, the composure and the poise and the character is so impressive. And they shared a story yesterday in the broadcast that Jahlil Okafor went to Brent Brown and said, "Make me a better defensive rebounder." And Brett Brown's reaction to that was, wow, I've never had a player come up to me and ask me, and this is someone that's been in the Spurs organization. He's never had someone come up to him directly and say, make me better,
it's a beautiful thing.
Better at an aspect of the game. So the fact that he sees where he has weaknesses and he wants to improve on that, given his incredible skill set offensively. I'm impressed. I think this is a guy that's going to have a big impact in the league. He's not going to end up being just a Brook Lopez if he continues to put an emphasis on getting better in those ways.
Absolutely, and I think he could be one of the best passing big men in the league. His poise and his hands and how he sees the floor again. I think he's got some skills there. Hey, is it too early to say that possibly in terms of just basketball IQ and poise and that kind of a world, this is one of the top draft class we've seen in a while? Because to me, when you look at a lot of these guys, you could say that same comparison with Towns, say the same thing with Porzingis, say the same thing with a lot of these guys. This is a hardworking, intelligent team. I mean, sorry, class with a really high ceiling. Like as we are saying before, there are other guys who, jump out of the roof and have all this skill set. But to me, it's just like the ceiling on this class is just monumental. Now, if we're staying with the bigs, there's two guys who quickly haven't had a huge impact, but are interesting to me. The first one, and I'll blow past this quickly because I know he's not going to have a huge impact this year. But one of my favorites, Miles Turner of Indiana.
I knew you were going to go with him.
I just had to put him in just to get it over with. But I'm a Miles Turner fan, and if he turns out to be a good player down the road, you've heard it here first. So he's a guy they're not using too much, obviously, because they have Paul George playing power forward. But you know what? When you're looking at his game, he's putting up some decent numbers, especially for the minutes he plays. And listen, I know what you're going to say. He's a rookie. Rookies rarely have a huge impact. But when you're looking at the body of work that he's slowly starting to build, you can see something there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I think we should clarify something. My skepticism with Miles Turner earlier in the year, I mean, in the discussions we've had, was you were kind of identifying at the time that you thought the Pacers had a chance of making the playoffs. And I don't think Miles Turner is going to have that kind of impact. They might get that impact from other players and make up for the lack of bigs that they have. But I just didn't think that he was someone that was going to translate to a lot of wins in his rookie season, which is fine because not many bigs and not many rookies in general do. But I think from a skill set standpoint, I mean, he's the perfect big man for what the Pacers want to do. He can space the floor. He's got good hands. He moves well, even though it looks funny when he does move. Yeah, he can block shots. He can protect the rim, or there's the potential for that. So I really do see what there is in Miles Turner. I just don't know if it's going to translate to wins year one, but I do think they made a really good pick and that he does have the potential to be a good player.
Absolutely. And when we're staying with the big man conversation, we can go right away to Sacramento, calling Willie Cauley-Stein, or Willie Trill, if he ever officially changes that over. Again, maybe being a little overlooked because he's playing with DeMarcus Cousins and such, but quietly putting up some half-decent numbers, 22 minutes a game, 7.2 points, 6.7 rebounds, 1.3 blocks, 1.2 steals, and shooting over 70% and hitting, unfortunately, 53% of his free throws. But he's not taking that many. He's only taking 2.8 a game, which means he's playing at a high efficiency level. He's not causing problems. And you know what? As a big man in the league, I think he's looking nice next to Cousins, and you're seeing, as we saw kind of in the camps before the draft, he's got a bit more of an offensive skill set than many people would have given him credit for.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Cauley-Stein's disappointing to me because not anything that he's done, but they went out and they signed Costa Koufos, who is one of the better bench big men in the league. And as a result of that, and not trading DeMarcus Cousins, we're seeing that Cauley-Stein's starting to get buried a little bit. And that's disappointing to me as someone that really did believe in his skill set. And I mean, obviously it's not going to impact his career long term, but we're just not seeing as much of Cauley-Stein as we'd like. He has a bit of an opportunity right now, just with DeMarcus Cousins kind of being under the weather and out for a little while. But it's just disappointing that Sacramento, a team that isn't competing now, isn't really giving the opportunities to a young Willie Cauley-Stein. But like you said, we have seen that he has more offensive upside than most anticipated. I really do believe in him as a player, and I think that there's a potential for him to work alongside DeMarcus Cousins. I think that is a fit that could work.
Oh, well, I agree. And I think that offensive side, especially when you're looking at the front court of Sacramento, I mean, Cousins is going to demand so much tension, so many shots that it's tough to get his own. I think Cauley-Stein, I think he has the ability to kind of like how we're looking at Nerlens Noel and learning to shoot kind of a 15-footer, maybe a corner three. When we saw in some of the training camps, maybe it wasn't consistent. But Cauley-Stein is not the worst shooter on earth. It may take a little bit of time to develop, but if he can ever develop an outside shot to space that floor and learn to hit his free throws at a better clip than 53%, this could create a dynamic offensive threat. And we already know defensively with Cousins' improvement and Willie Cauley-Stein's ability to guard multiple positions, could be an interesting team going forward.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I do think that Sacramento is a team that might have a bright future. I mean, the front office is obviously the question. They do a lot of things that are, typical King. Yeah, I mean, even giving up Nick Stauskas for essentially nothing. I mean, we're seeing that Stauskas is playing better in Philly. I mean, there's obviously the caveat there of, yeah, everybody's going to put up some numbers in Philly just because they don't have NBA players really. But you just see you're giving up on potential right after you drafted him in the first round, which isn't typically a winning formula. So we'll see what happens there. I'm hopeful they can get it together because, I mean, DeMarcus Cousins is probably, if not he's absolutely one of the best centers in the league. I'm not going to crown him just yet, but there's talent there. There's Willie Cauley-Stein. Ben McLemore is having a bit of a slow start to this year, but he showed some improvement last year. So there's talent there, and there's pieces that you'd like to see do well. So hopefully they can get it together, but, I mean, they've been bad for so long for a reason, and that's their front office.
Absolutely. Now, there's one more big Portis in Chicago I want to talk about now. And now originally when I was looking at the draft, I was like, Toronto was drafting just a bit after, but no, they actually drafted 2 spots before. Now I know this guy doesn't get a lot of play just because of the glut of bigs that are there in Chicago. But can you tell me a bit about what you see in this young power forward center?
I'm on team free Bobby Portis. I think they need to make a trade to get this guy some playing time because Chicago, I mean, they're struggling a little bit early on. That's expected when you got a coaching change, but I think they need to start looking a little bit more towards the future. And I think Bobby Portis is going to be a big part of that. I think he's a prototypical Bull. I think he's aggressive. He can space the floor. He's got good touch. I liked his defensive instincts. I was impressed when I saw him in preseason in a game in Winnipeg. I think that he's going to be an impact player. I don't know what that impact's going to be. I don't know what his upside is. Maybe he's another Taj Gibson. But given the fact that Taj Gibson's contract is running up and he's getting up there in age, I think you wouldn't stand to lose too much if you start going a little bit more towards your youth. I know you're a big proponent of that as well. If you're not a contender, you should start looking for the future a little bit.
You're just a pretender. Exactly. Now, it just boggles my mind because when I was watching him in the pre-camps and this, I was like, he would be the perfect Raptor. I would love to see this guy next to JV with his little jump shot, his ability to spread the floor, jump, block some shots. A little confused why he didn't land there. But now, I agree with what you're saying, but I think freeing Bobby Portis is almost like, well, where are we if we're the Bulls, right? Because the Bulls are contending, like in a sense, maybe not to the level where we think they're going to beat Cleveland, but a couple injuries, a couple things could happen. The Chicago Bulls can run off a couple of wins in a row against almost any team in the league. I think personally, I think they have enough talent. Do they have it in a 7-game series? Maybe, maybe not. But a guy like this, I think it's tough because he's only getting 10 minutes a game. And as much as I think you need to nurture your young guys at the same point, 10 minutes is not going to pull it. And I just hope he's not stuck there.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be stuck. I don't think he's going to be stuck there too long. I mean, I think he's going to have time after this season. You got, like I said, Taj Gibson's nearing the end of his contract. Joakim Noah's at the end of his contract. And I mean, if they do end up letting Noah walk, That's really going to signal kind of the end of an era for Chicago. But he's had like 4 games where he's only scored like 2 or fewer points.
Well, he's coming off the bench at this point, right? And
Yeah,
they're seeing how this is the best play for them, so he's not their starter.
right. He's coming off the bench and he's not playing well offensively. He's not playing well defensively. And I mean, this is a guy that came 4th in MVP voting just 2 years ago. He's regressed at a dramatic rate, and some of that might be
Tom
just
Thibodeau.
playing too much under Thibodeau and playing through injuries in lost seasons when Derrick Rose wasn't even going to play. I think to an extent they poorly managed that asset, and as a result of that, it might be time to move on from him. So when I say free Bobby Portis, you might have a bit of a drop off, but if you can get something for a Joakim Noah, if you can get something for a Taj Gibson, I don't know how much of a drop off it's realistically going to be if Noah's playing at such a low level. You're obviously going to get something in return for Noah too. So I don't think it would be the biggest drop off in the world, and they would have the ability to play one of their young guys and get some experience under his wing.
Absolutely. And speaking of moving on, we should go back from the big men. We now have to touch on the point guards or the littler guys in this draft. And there's a couple names that come to the top. Emmanuel Mudiay is one of them for me. We'll go to Lakerland right after, but Emmanuel Mudiay, Denver Nuggets, he was in my mind supposed to be the rookie of the year. Get the ball in his hands a lot. He's playing 30 minutes a game, but things haven't always been easy for him, being a bit turnover prone, we'll say. Manuel Mudiay has shown flashes, been up and down. What's he been in your eyes?
I think you characterized him pretty well there. He is fairly raw. I think he's shown a lot of. I hate the term, but he's shown that he is a true point guard. He does have a good balance between when he looks for his and when he looks to get others involved. I mean, there is a lot of talent on that Denver team. Wilson Chandler, Danilo Gallinari, Kenneth Farid is revitalized. They got good bigs in Yusuf Nurkic, and I forget what the other guy's name is, but they've got some legitimate talent there. So he's in a position to succeed, and I think Jameer Nelson's leadership is going to help him. But like I said, rookies aren't going to translate to wins, at least not early on, or not many of them. So you're going to see some struggles. You're going to see high turnovers. He doesn't have a great jump shot, at least not yet. There is a bit of a hitch there. So I think this is a process. And when you look at the other guys, we talked how polished they were, like a Jahlil Okafor or Karl-Anthony Towns. I think it's going to be a really tall order for him to overtake those guys in Rookie of the Year voting.
Absolutely. Well, for those people who think he's all that and everything, convince me he's not Michael Carter Williams.
Okay, he can finish well at the rim. He's shown, even though he does turn the ball over, I think he's shown better vision than Michael Carter Williams. I mean, Michael Carter Williams doesn't finish well anywhere from the floor. He's got a very poor assist to turnover ratio. And it was just kind of a volume thing in Philly. I think when you look at Mudiay, he's someone that's going to be a lot more composed. I think what I've seen out of him so far tells me that eventually he is going to be a good player. He just needs time. Whereas Michael Carter Williams, I mean, he came into the league at 20 years old, I believe. He had more time in college. He should have been more polished than he was coming into the league, and he hasn't shown a ton of improvement since then. So that's what makes me believe that he's not just going to be another MCW.
There you go. Well done. And speaking of another 6'5" point guard, we got to go to Lakerland. And maybe he's not playing as much as he wants to, but what's happening with D'Angelo Russell there?
He's looked okay. Obviously, it's a little tough for him because they do have another talented point guard or another talented guard prospect in Clarkson.
Mm-hmm.
So and you got a coach that's known for playing his veterans, even though Clarkson's only been in the league 1 year longer. He's going to play his more composed players over the rookies because he's looking for wins, and Kobe Bryant still thinks they can make playoffs. So it's a bit of a mess in Lakerland, as it often has been over the past few years. I still think that there is a chance I mean, I shouldn't say there's a chance. It's so early. We can see a guy start off really hot now and fade into being nothing. We could see a guy that struggles now turn out to be a franchise player. So we should kind of temper our discussions that way. But I think there is the possibility that the Lakers are going to regret passing up on Jahlil Okafor. I kind of felt that at the draft, and there's been nothing that's happened so far this season to convince me otherwise.
Yeah, I can see I can see it that way. I still think down the road he's going to be a better player than Okafor because I think Okafor's defense ultimately is going to limit him. But I mean, I've always been a little tough on him that way, and we'll have to see. But moving on, because we have a few more to do. Justice Winslow, Miami Heat, guy who was arguably drafted in a perfect position, comes in, wing off the bench, gets to learn under the Dwayne Wade, all these guys. How's he looked for you? Because right now, if we're looking at what he's producing for the Miami Heat, he's playing 27 minutes a game, which is not terrible. 6.8 points, 4.8 rebounds. His PER is actually only 9. But he's not playing terribly. He's shooting 47%. Have you got a bit of a feel for this guy?
Yeah, I would classify him as another guy that you could compliment his composure a ton, especially on the defensive end. He's someone that's really going to benefit from the leadership and the direction of Dwayne Wade. There's no denying that at all. Just looking at what he does defensively, I mean, he'll chase guys around screens, and when they pull up for that jumper, he's not getting kind of baited into taking a foul, which so many even experienced players do when they're chasing from behind. He'll just stop right up, and like he gets right next to them, and he's kind of in their head, but he's not committing the foul. Really, really impressed with what he's doing defensively. I think he's landed in a perfect situation. Obviously, Miami has a little bit of struggles when it comes to shooting the ball and things like that. And he's no exception to that. But I think the early returns on him are really encouraging. And I'm sure the Heat fans, like they were at the draft, are thanking somebody up there for letting him slip to the position that he did.
This is just feeling like Caron Butler 2.0 for me.
Yeah, me too.
Now, speaking of a very similar player, Stanley Johnson, the Detroit Pistons, playing a few less minutes, 18 minutes a game, but the Pistons are winning. So obviously it's tough to play your rookies when you're a little bit more veteran starters are playing. Having trouble with the shooting percentage, only shooting about 29%, 20% from threes and 60% from free throws. Still giving you 4.2 rebounds in 18 minutes. It's actually pretty good. What have you seen, enjoyed, or been worried about with Stanley Johnson so far?
That bench in Detroit is just terrible. Like I still really like Stanley Johnson from a long-term standpoint. I think he's going to be a starter, if not, well, probably not this year, but he's going to be a starter in the relatively near future. But my God, that bench is not producing. Andre Drummond's just dominating. But in the starting lineup, but I mean, they had a night where Drummond had 25 points and 29 rebounds, and their bench they lost the game because their bench had 2 total points. So Stanley Johnson's struggling a little bit, but when you're playing kind of a platoon style, if you don't have other veterans on the bench that are making things easier for him, he's going to struggle. So I think that's another kind of project there. But I don't think people should read too much into his early numbers.
No, I agree with most of your points there. I think it's an interesting point because I think actually starting on this team would give him that kind of leadership and camaraderie that he's lacking with this kind of defunct bench squad.
Right, but at the same time, they're looking to make playoffs.
No, exactly. And Marcus Morris having a bit of a comeback year. He's playing well there. Now, speaking of another wing, obviously the other side of the ball, Mario Hezonja of the Orlando Magic. We're talking defense before we're talking offense now. This guy has shown, for lack of better words, a ceiling, a really, really high ceiling to me. His ability to just leap around, beautiful shot, pull up from seemingly unlimited range and attack the basket. And he doesn't seem afraid. Super Mario is looking super to you, or are you seeing some flaws in Koopa's castle?
Mario Hezonja has no flaws. He is the leader of the revolution. It's his world. We're just living in it. I'm a
You
big
heard it here
Hezonja guy.
first.
Yeah. I'm a big Hezonja fan. I love his personality. I love his aggression. Obviously, he's raw. A lot of what we've kind of classified the other rookies as would fit aptly to him as well. But he is someone that is exciting. He definitely doesn't lack confidence. And I think if you're a Magic fan, you're excited about what he's going to bring. I mean, the Magic, they're staying in games with a lot of really good teams. Like they took them at the Thunder to double overtime, and if Russell Westbrook doesn't hit a half-court shot, they win the game basically in regulation. They took the Rockets into OT as well. They beat the Raptors, who were previously undefeated. So early returns in Orlando are pretty good, and he's a big part of the success they're having, even in a smaller role.
Absolutely, and I know it's kind of a good role for me, just not having to start. We have Tobias Harris starting. We bring him off the bench with Aaron Gordon. Both no pressure, but they both are, kind of positionless guys in a way. Like I guess there are positions for him, but like I love the change of pace of adding the energy and the athleticism of Hezonja and Aaron Gordon off the bench for that Orlando team. And I just think
Mhm.
it's a great situation. It allows them to be clever with their cap situation going forward. They have a lot of young guys they'll have to pay, but he's one of those guys up and coming, great size for position, good ball handling. He'll make some bonehead mistakes, but in the NBA, sometimes it's your confidence and your willingness to take that open shot when other people hesitate. And that's one thing I don't worry about with Mario, his hesitation on taking that
Mhm.
open shot. And when we look at Orlando, beyond Vucevic, who's should be maybe your second scorer, and Oladipo, they do kind of need that guy who puts the ball in the basket, especially if you're going to start a guy who's really not scoring in Alfred Payton.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think, like, as much as I've been someone that always says positions don't exist, I think the modern NBA is positionless basketball in a different way. It's guys that can play multiple positions, that can do things that weren't traditionally assigned to those roles. I mean, probably like one of the first players to start to do that is LeBron James, because he's essentially a point guard in a small forward's body that was playing all five positions. You're seeing Draymond Green play multiple positions. I think Hezonja is someone that can play both positions on the wing. He can do a lot of different things. Like you said, he's obviously not lacking in confidence. He's willing to take those open shots. So yeah, I definitely get what you're saying there, and I think Orlando is an interesting case because they have so many guys that can play multiple positions, that can do a bunch of different things. So I think he is in a really good role right now, and I think Orlando's a team with just a ton of interesting young players that might be able to surprise a lot of teams this year. I think they're going to catch teams off guard. I'd almost liken it to the Phoenix Suns 2 years ago, where everyone thought they were going to be one of the worst teams in the league, and they ended up just missing playoffs. It probably would have been a playoff team in the East. So who knows? Maybe Orlando's going to be better than expected and really challenge some teams.
Exactly. And there's a few other rookies there that I thought were, would be doing a little bit more, maybe playing quietly, like Trey Lyles, obviously, with Utah doing well, only playing 7 minutes a game. So it's tough to show anything you're doing. Frank Kaminsky, I'm still going to stick by my bust rule for the ninth overall pick by the
Oh,
Charlotte Hornets.
come on. I don't think he's going to be a star, but I've always thought he's going to be like a Channing Frye, which I think is a very nice player. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously
but
they
you can't.
should.
You don't draft Channing Frye if you know it's Channing Frye at the ninth overall pick.
No, I mean you don't, but you're starting to get to that range where players just don't make it, like where there isn't a really high success rate, and you know that Frank is going to probably be a contributor. He's going to be a positive player. I mean, Justice Winslow was there, so that makes everything that they did kind of really questionable. And I know the Celtics also offered them 4 first-round picks for that pick because they wanted Winslow, and they didn't take that, which if I'm Charlotte, I'm either taking Winslow or I'm certainly taking Winslow, but if you're not going to, you take those picks. But yeah, I don't think I think bust is a little too harsh when we're talking about Kaminsky.
All right, well, we'll keep it like that. And that image just popped in my head of having a potential, wing of Kenneth of Winslow and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. Just saying, just locking up the wings.
Yeah,
That
and you don't have to trade for Nick Batum at that point, so you can keep Noah Vonleh. Like you could have kept him and built around him, MKG and Justice Winslow, which I thought.
and he still gives you the floor spreading that you wanted from Kaminsky and all that.
Right, exactly.
Cool. Well, is there another rookie that you thought that we missed on this recap so far of the NBA rookies for the 2015-2016 season?
I mean, we're obviously forgetting Sasha Khan. No, I'm kidding.
No Homer name drop there, Mr. Fear the Sword.
Yeah, no kidding. No, I think those are probably the most notable rookies. And like you said, this is a really exciting rookie class. Maybe the only guy that we are forgetting, even though he wasn't drafted this year, would be Julius Randle.
Julius Randle, exactly. No, that's true, and he has a great situation there, and I think he's shown his toughness on a team, and I think he's a player Kobe could really get behind. Now, if we're looking from here till maybe All-Star break, who do you think is one of those guys that can not only maintain but maybe make that jump in and throw their name in the hat of those top rookies who maybe we're a bit undervaluing right now?
So you're asking for kind of a sleeper this year?
Yeah, I mean, it could still be one of the names that we said, but realistically, when we're saying the top ones, we're saying probably, Towns, Herzonia, and Okafor, right? We'll say they're probably the top 3 producing rookies-ish. So, do you think there's someone outside of maybe that trio who has a chance to jump up there? And
I'd say Stanley Johnson. I'm really a believer in him. And I'm not a big believer in Marcus Morris. I think there's a potential for him to kind of put it together to overcome a slower start and potentially earn a starting role because, like you said, that's probably going to be a position that's going to benefit him a lot. So I'd probably go with Stanley Johnson. Mario Hezonja would probably be the other one, but I would still consider him kind of in the upper tier for rookies.
No, I completely agree, and I want to just swing for the fences and give Turner my game ball, but I'm actually going to say I say look out for Devin Booker. I think while he may not blow up, I think he brings a skill set that they really need there in Phoenix, and adds the youth in the future. So I think he's got a cool little spot, and I think once he gets a couple of game time minutes through himself, and let's not forget, who knows, does Phoenix necessarily keep both Bledsoe and Knight long term, or do they try to trade for some front court help, maybe package one of them with Markieff? Who knows what happens, right? It just seems like the Suns, in my mind, aren't going to stay the way they look right now. So
yeah, I think Knight's probably going to be the guy that they would keep if they do move on. I mean, they just invested him in the offseason, and they have shopped Eric Bledsoe a considerable amount over the past few years. So yeah, I don't think it's a guarantee that they make a change, but I think that might be what we would end up seeing.
All right, perfect. Well, guys, thanks for joining for another episode here on hoopslounge.com with Justin and myself. Phil, we've been doing the recap after week 1 of the rookies so far. Let us know what you guys think in the comment section below. And remember, as always, keep in the lounge.